Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Today we've got a guide to Quest Mage. I know I've been gone a little while, it was finals week for me, but now school is totally over, so expect a lot more frequent content from now on. This video is going to teach you absolutely everything you need to know about Quest Mage, and I know you guys are going to love it. And so if you want to support more high-effort content like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, follow me on Twitch, join my Discord for the deck list, and check me out on Twitter as well. And last but not least, if you guys are interested in improving and getting one-on-one coaching, that is something that I'm now offering since I have more free time. If you're interested in coaching, just DM me on Discord for more information. Thanks guys, and enjoy the video. I'm going to break down every single thing that you guys need to know in order to play Quest Mage well. A lot of people... I've seen some people say that it's an easy deck. It's not an easy deck, it's very difficult. And in fact, I still don't feel like I've mastered it, but I've definitely mastered it more than any of you in Twitch chat. So today we're gonna go over it. So I think the first most important thing to talk about is the general win condition. Like, how do you actually win games? Because there are some people that really don't know, and to some of you this is going to sound crazy, but they don't know how to win with Quest Mage. And the general strategy, of course, is to play 2-drops early on, draw cards, and then have a giant swing turn in which you take back the board, deal a ton of damage, generate a ton of value, and prevent your opponent from responding. You then use that turn to either complete the quest then, or complete the quest in the next couple turns, and then by about turn 7 or 8, you want to play the quest, drop some giants, and kill them. So that's the general strategy. Of course, it differs from deck to deck how slow or fast you play, and also in what order and how aggressively you play your cards. One thing that I think if I had to tell people right off the bat that would immediately improve their win rate with this deck is the mulligans. And so I actually wrote down a general mulligan guide, and I'm going to go over the general mulligan guide for you guys. And so there are a lot of cards where you treat them the same in all matchups, and some cards you treat them differently in different matchups, and sometimes you treat them differently based on the class if you know what you're seeing at your particular rank or what you expect your opponent to be. So I think the best way is not to go card for card through the list and just tell you, but rather to start with the cards that you really want to see all the time, and then go into the cards that you never want to see. I think the most important thing that you should know is that the cards Evocation, Licensed Adventurer, and Questing Explorer, you always keep no matter what in every matchup, every copy. So those cards are just too important in completing the quest and getting early tempo, and therefore you always keep them. Cyclone is one card that you always keep one of, but I rarely ever keep the second one. In fact, I pretty much almost never keep the second one, so just keep the first. Against Warrior, we typically expect to see aggro Warrior, and the thing is that if you mulligan for aggro and its control, you're usually not disappointed, because you want the early game minions on board, and early game minions on board is kind of how you win against everybody, especially against late game control decks, because that chip damage really adds up. It forces them to use early resources on minions that aren't your swing cards like Luna, Flamewaker, and Sorcerer's Apprentice. Do I need Licensed Adventure? Yes, you need every single card in this deck, or it's just not going to be as good. Of course, the deck is insane, so if you play it without certain cards, it's still going to be insane, but I would never recommend you swap any cards in this deck list. The fact is like, it only costs 700 gold to get Licensed Adventure, so it's really worth it. So this is not a matchup that we see very typically, Odd Warrior, but Odd Warrior is a pretty easy win. What we need to do, and it's the same as pretty much every control matchup, it's really similar to Druid, in that for the most part, we just play our minions, they gain armor, and we use our minions to gain early chip damage. And as long as we keep up a constant stream of pressure, they won't actually get that high on the armor total. I would play Luna here, but I think the chance that it dies is just too high. He's got too many likely removals. He tossed all of his cards, so I wouldn't expect him to have Shield Slam in hand, but there's still a decent chance that he has Shield Slam, and I also don't want to kill this minion. But really what we're looking for is we're looking for a famous mid-game tempo swing, as Ixar would refer to it, with Flame Waker, Sorcerer's Apprentice, and hopefully Elemental Evocation into Cyclone. That will do enough damage, usually to remove all their armor and then some, and if we generate enough spells, we can use the value and tempo from those spells in the mid-game to keep that armor total as low as possible.
Way.
Going to continue down the Mulligan just to talk about that a little bit more. So one thing that people apparently do on HS Replay is they keep Magic Trick and Primordial Glyph. Look, those are good cards. They are good cards, right? They're Hearthstone cards. They do cool things, but you'd never keep them in the Mulligan. I would look, there are very specific situations in which you would keep Magic Trick with Elemental Evocation, Cyclone, Sorcerers. But even then, I don't even know if you know, that's a pretty crazy mulligan that you have to have on the coin, and so generally I'm pretty okay with recommending that you just always toss Magic Trick and you always toss Primordial Glyph. The fact is that you don't need spells, right? Your deck runs enough spells that you will find them throughout the course of the game, so it never makes sense to keep spells. You want to keep minions that do things, because minions get in that chip damage. You aren't always going to have 4 giants. In fact, most of the time you won't have 4 giants to deal damage, and so yes, your quest technically caps out at like 32 with giant damage, but you can do so much more by just prepping your minions to do that damage early on. And with our hand incredibly full, I'm just going to try and draw a 1-cost spell with Magic Trick. Okay. I don't want to get overdrawn by him, so I don't think I want to have... I really don't want to have any more than 8 cards in hand. The thing about 8 cards, and why that's a good breaking point, is because if he plays Cold Light, we only burn 1 card. The 2 from Cold Light and then the 1 from our next draw, which is ultimately not that bad. Well, consider that Flame Waker plus any spells we can fit in are basically free because we want to play the Cyclone with them, and we'll just coin Cyclone. So we could play Flame Waker, Primordial Glyph, and then whatever it gets, coin Cyclone. I think that'll destroy most of the board, so seems good enough to me. Incanter's Flow for free is pretty good, especially considering we don't have any sorcerers in hand. And fortunately, we get Scorch, which is discounted by the Mana Cyclone. And we also get Echo of Medivh. Echo of Medivh is kind of insane, because once we get 4 giants, we can just make a copy of every giant. We're really not supposed to have this card versus these guys, but we'll take it. And what I typically do is I'm typically saving the second Flame Waker for the quest turn. You can quest Flame Waker for 8, play your giants for 0, and then the following turn, you just save up as many spells as possible, and the armor total is pretty irrelevant at that point, like, they just kind of always die. I don't know which one I want to Scorch. It definitely depends on what other spells I have, so I'm going to open this first. Okay, well, Conjurer's Calling is insane value with the Arcane Giant, but considering that I have the Echo of Medivh in hand, it might be just too much, I think. I believe Netherwind Portal is probably better here, just because it gets some tempo on board in the meantime. And if we're contesting what he's playing, it might as well be those guys right there. Hey, Emilla, thank you so much for that subscription. Emilla says, Streaming Pog, will you play Reno Quest Mage in the future? No, I don't think it's very good right now, to be honest. But thank you so much for that subscription. I really appreciate it. So I don't think he's going to gain too much health here. He doesn't really have a way to destroy our secrets, so we're never at risk of dying. So I think we're just going to Ice Block, discount all of our giants to 0. I mean, we could play all of the giants now and then echo them back, but I don't really like baiting out the board clear and then just playing into another one. I don't think that's very good. I think it's better to do it on the post-quest turn when we can fill up our entire hand after we've played everything. We could also wait till turn 9. If we wait till turn 9, we could just get 3 giants and then triple those up and play them instantly.
What to do?
So he just gave himself another copy of Ziliax, and he's going to put it on this guy. Whenever your minion takes damage, gain 2 armor. I don't think I can do anything about it, though. I can go in this particular turn, but it's just not as good as it could be. Like, we can do so much more. Because quest here, we just get 3 giants, which definitely doesn't kill him.
Time runs out on me.
Alright, I think this is pretty good. How's the new Mechathune? It's good, it just doesn't beat Quest Mage.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Wait, why? Why? Isn't that bad? Fair, by the way. I think the best order is to Spellwing, Ping, and then Book. Well, is there anything that we book that would make us not want to play Flamewaker? No. Yikes. Can we hit it for 4? It actually saves us like an insane amount of damage if we do. Oh, come on. Well, we weren't able to get all the way there. If those missiles had cooperated with us, we actually would have had... We would have dropped him to 2, I think. And I think if the missiles had behaved even like... If the missiles had behaved perfectly, we could have killed him. Not something that we could have expected, but I still think overall a solid play. Alright, well, it's very likely that a giant wins this, so that's good. Okay, let's see how good we are at Hearthstone. Oh, we're incredibly good. So armoring up and leaving the 3-4 up is not enough, because we can ping this 3-4. I just learned what this thing does. Whenever this minion takes damage, gain 2 attack. So we can actually ping it to deal 2 damage. Very strong. Powerful play. If only we had hit 250-50 is what is that, a 1 in 4? If we had hit the 1 in 4, we would have just killed him outright, I think. I'm not sure how that interaction works. Like, if we drop him to 0 health, I'm pretty sure he dies. Wow. We actually did it. We actually killed him with the 5-head ping. Okay, and so that game didn't go perfectly. Like, it was a long time before we found the critical mass that we needed, but it pretty much went according to plan. You know, we played Flamewaker early for a swing turn, we generated some spells, we used those spells to generate tempo in the mid-game, and then you just kind of leave the board up. A lot of people don't realize as well that oftentimes you play the quest, you get the board down, and then once you get the board down, the opponent can only clear sometimes. A lot of times they simply don't have it. And so playing a giant board with Quest and getting most of the way there is usually enough to kill them, since oftentimes what you're requiring is that they both heal and clear the board in a single turn, and most decks cannot do that. So going back to the Mulligan, I think Book of Specters is another one that people might be inclined to keep. That is a little more correct. When I like to keep Book of Specters is when I know I'm against a particularly slow deck, like a control deck. If I'm against Priest, I like to keep Book of Specters. If I'm against Warlock and I know it's a slow Warlock, I think Book of Specters is alright. And another tough one that people have trouble understanding is Violet Spellwing. So Violet Spellwing has like a huge keep rate, you know, like much higher than some other cards. And that's not entirely incorrect. But you should not always keep Violet Spellwing. Certain classes, it's not very good against. Against Mage, I would never keep Violet Spellwing. Against Warlock, I would only keep Violet Spellwing if I heavily expect it to be a discard Warlock. I think one of the best uses of Spellwing is to put it down to contest a minion that you know is coming. When you're playing against Odd Demon Hunter, for instance, playing Spellwing turn 1 is very effective because it contests the 1-2, which snowballs. It's also very good against Shaman. However, one thing that you should know is that whenever you want to play the Spellwing, but you have the 2-3 in hand, the 2-3 is so good that you should play the quest first and then play the 2-3. And if you see the 2-3 in your mulligan, then you actually don't want to keep Spellwing because you expect to be playing the quest into the 2-3. However, the 3-2, on the other hand, the 3-2 doesn't usually contest aggro enough that it's worth playing over Spellwing. The 2-3 has that critical mass of 3 health that really lives to a lot of early game effects and minions, but the 3-2 just doesn't have that. It's got 2 health, which the meta is very prepared for right now. So I think a lot of people need to understand that playing Spellwing is good, but playing 2-3 is even better. Against aggro, you also have to consider, in the mulligan, you want to evaluate your win rate against a particular deck. Okay, let's say you go against Priest. You know that against Priest, you never lose. Never lose to Priest. So, because of that, you can afford to keep slightly worse cards that you know will get you there in the end. I might keep Arcane Intellect with a 2-drop versus Priest because I know they're not going to give me a trouble in the early game, right? I just need to draw cards and eventually I'm going to get there. But if I'm facing a Demon Hunter, then I'm not going to settle for bad cards, right? I'm going to try really hard in the mulligan to get exactly what I need because that's my chance to win these unfavored matchups. However, and some people will immediately point this out, and that's okay, good Quest Mage players are pretty much favored versus everything, and that's why it's so important that people learn it. Against Mage, at my rank, I assume it's always Quest Mage. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for 2-drops. I'm not looking for Spellwing. If I'm on the coin and I have a 2-drop, I'll take Flamewaker, but that's the only time. Sorcerers is really good, so if I know it's the mirror, I'm going to keep Sorcerers no matter what. Are there any cards apart from the quest that one should always keep regardless of the matchup? Yes, I said this earlier, but those cards are Evocation, First Cyclone, Sorcerers, almost all the time. The only time I don't keep Sorcerers is if I'm going first against aggro. If I'm going first against aggro and I don't have a 2-drop, then I won't keep Sorcerers, but I really want to keep Sorcerers almost all the time. But the most important ones are Licensed Adventurer and Questing Explorer. You always keep 2 copies of those, no matter what. Yeah, Evocation is definitely an always keep. I did have someone ask me in coaching sometimes if they're supposed to keep Giant. Let me tell you, there's no matchup ever, no matter what you think the deck is, what your hand looks like, where you ever keep a Giant. And in terms of, I think we've covered pretty much all the cards so far. Elemental Evocation is a card that I may not have touched on. I keep it with Cyclone only. Keep it with Cyclone.
I wonder.
With the Ray of Frost in hand, I know that I'll have enough gas to continue generating spells if I find a Cyclone, or if I find a Sorcerer's and a Waker. I think tempoing the Giant was correct there, but... I don't know if how much of a punish it was with Fireball, because it forced him to have a really awkward turn where he just cleared his own board for us.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
When is the best time to play Evocation? That's a good question, and something that I figured out really quickly is that the best time to play Evocation is... Sorry, let me take this turn. Let me take this turn, chat. Not sure what happened with my game there. That for a second it kind of bugged out on me. So I think the break point with Evocation that makes it really good with Sorcerers down, and you're pretty much always playing it with Sorcerers down, is going to be with 2 mana left over. I think Sorc plus 2 mana left over is basically the perfect time to play Evocation. And let me explain why. The reason is because in pretty much every matchup, no matter what, your opponent has a secret that will screw them. There's a secret that your opponent just cannot let you have. And Evocation is actually reasonably likely to find you that secret. So what I do is I save Evocation until there's 2 mana left over with Sorc so that I can play everything that's free, and on top of it, if that busted secret is in Evocation, I play it right away. This comes in handy in particular against decks like Mecha'thun. I was actually in a coaching session today where they were playing against Mecha'thun, and I told them that you just need to generate as many secrets as possible just to really confuse your opponent. And, as luck would have it, a randomly generated Explosive Runes was ultimately the thing that killed their Dollmaster Dorian, and they had no win condition. Potion of Poly against Druid is another one. That's totally true. So I'm just going to tempo play out my guys here. I think this is the best way to go, because if we can get in the chip damage, then we don't need multiple giants to kill him. We just need, well, really 1 or 2. Potion of Poly Voidcaller feels good. The only problem is that Warlock has a lot of checks for minion interaction. They have a lot of cheap minions that really benefit from that, like the 1 mana draw guy. What is that? Kobold Librarian? That one's terrible. Terrible into Potion of Poly. So it's not as good against Warlock as people want it to be, but it is playable. Like, sometimes you can screw over Warlock with secrets too. Is Mecha'thun tier 1 now? No, it's garbage. It's garbage. I really wish people would stop asking me about Mecha'thun Warlock. It hasn't been good since January. How does one beat Skull on 5? Oh yeah, if you check out on my Discord, I can permit JVJD to post the link, but I had a particular game today where I beat Skull on 5. It's possible, but you need to avoid taking damage from the big demons and set up swing turns where you force them to basically play out demons awkwardly or not use the resources in the way that they want to. What made Mecha'thun go bad? Quest Mage. He means you need to high roll? Yeah, absolutely. Of course you need to high roll to beat Skull on 5. Skull on 5 is already a massive high roll. I'm killing this guy even though it has less attack because I don't want a taunt on board. And really all of these things can be saved for a quest turn. As soon as we find a giant, this is basically lethal. What is the best now? Quest Mage. What is a good ratio of minions / spells in the deck list? Listen up. Don't use any other deck list. You see these 30 cards here on the right? You see these 30 cards right here? Play these. Play these 30 cards and don't change a single one of them. Every other deck list is just slightly worse. They still work. They still work because they're still Quest Mage, but they're worse. I've experimented with all the cards, and this is the deck list. If you're not winning with this deck list, then you're playing it wrong. And Vargoth is something that I can talk about. So, a lot of people don't realize that Vargoth is kind of a crutch. It's a card that comes down so late in the game that... Wow, is this lethal? Typically, your combos are going to be on turns like 6 through 8. 6 through 8 are your typical combo turns. And so saving Vargoth, as compared to Giant, it is an untempoable minion. Giants, not only can you tempo, but you can play them for free. Vargoth, you can only play it for 4 no matter what, which means that it's only good on turn 9. Most of your games don't go to turn 9, so there's no need. He's at 26, so with double Flamewaker, each spell is 4, and so we just need to play 6 spells. Yeah, that's lethal, right? Because we can play 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's 4 mana. So we would need, what, 2 spells? Yeah, it just is enough. Evocation does need to cooperate-ish, but I think we're so close that we'll be alright. Well. Yeah, this is it. There you go. Do you think Blizzard is going to nerf Quest Mage a second time? Yes, but it's going to take a long time. Do we just have to get used to the reality? I think they will nerf it, but you do have to get used to it. So I think I've covered most of the basics, a lot of the things you need to know. Definitely some of the specific matchups we'll get to over the course of the stream. Are there any questions that you guys have about Quest Mage or any particular things that you feel like you have trouble with that you shouldn't? I want to hear what are you guys having trouble with? What do you want to know? Insights on why they would nerf it so lightly when it's the most hated deck? No insights whatsoever, but good question, absolutely. So the nerf was useless, good job, Blizzard? True. Is Luna really that good? Yes. When should we Ray of Frost to deal for damage or freeze 2 minions? So most of the time, it's effective as a freeze, but consider that freezing is only a delay. It's good to freeze when you have a follow-up. It's not good to freeze when you're buying yourself time. And I think double freezing for damage can be good against aggro. I would probably do it against, like, Battle Fiend if I didn't feel like I had another good play. Do you ever toss the quest? No, never. Never, ever, 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 ever against any deck that could ever be invented or has ever been played no matter what. Even if you had access to their entire 30-card list, if they ran Skulking Geist on 1 somehow, you'd still play the quest. Like, I cannot invent a scenario, no matter what, in which you would toss the quest. It's just not possible. How do we win versus heavy armor decks? I know, but for the sake of the guide. Yeah, so this is something that I talked about earlier, but I'll kind of repeat. Essentially, the premise is you use your first Flamewaker to deal a ton of chip damage. You use your 2-drops to deal chip damage. It's all about chip damage. It's not about the turn, right? Like if over the course of the game they just slowly build armor and then all of a sudden you're facing down 70, you have already played wrong up until that point. You need to use your early minions for chip damage, use your mid-game Flamewaker for a ton of damage, and then use the spells that you generate off of that swing turn to generate tempo/value over the course of the remainder of the game as you draw giants and complete quest. And then on your quest turn, you use the second Flamewaker, hopefully like Sork, Evo if you can manage, plus a bunch of giants, and that'll deal like 60 damage. So when should we tempo out giants and when should we not? Basically, you should always tempo out giants against aggro if you don't have another play. Most aggro decks just can't do anything about an 8/8, and so you'll just out-aggro them by playing an 8/8. Against Secret Mage is one where you just win all the time with giants. Odd Demon Hunter is another one where you win all the time with giants. And probably Paladin, if that were a real class, you would do the same. Hunter, I'm sure. But if you are against a control deck that has clears to individual guys like Priest, I would never ever tempo a giant versus Priest. Oh, Shaman, true. Shaman is one where we would tempo giants. But I would never tempo a giant versus Priest under any circumstances. Unless I knew for a fact that they somehow could not remove my thing, which I wouldn't know that.